What happens when two of the most powerful figures in Rome decide there isn't room for both of them in the same empire? The rivalry between Octavian and Mark Antony wasn't just a struggle for power. It was a clash that sealed the fate of Rome. Rome was torn between two colossal forces. On one side, Octavian, Julius Caesar's young heir, calculated and determined to consolidate his rule. On the other, Mark Antony, the seasoned general, passionate, and aligned with Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt. But this wasn't just a battle of political and military strategies. It was a civil war that would mark the end of one era and the beginning of another. Imagine the chaos of a divided Rome, friends turning into enemies, Roman armies fighting each other. Meanwhile, the Mediterranean became the stage for one of the greatest naval confrontations in history, the Battle of Actium. Thousands of men clashing, legions battling, as two leaders fought not just for victory, but for eternity. What drove Mark Antony, one of Rome's most respected men, to risk everything alongside Cleopatra? How did Octavian outmaneuver such a formidable rival to consolidate the Roman Empire under his rule? And most importantly, what really happened in the final battle that decided the future of Rome? In today's video, we'll dive deep into the epic rivalry between Octavian and Mark Antony, from the first signs of tension to the decisive moment at the Battle of Actium. Discover the intrigues, betrayals, and strategies that turned a personal feud into a war for the fate of the ancient world's greatest empire. You'll uncover the behind-the-scenes of this rivalry, Mark Antony's critical missteps, Octavian's brilliant tactics, and Cleopatra's pivotal role in one of history's greatest power struggles. Get ready for a story filled with drama, ambition, and power. If you're fascinated by tales of great leaders, epic battles, and the moments that changed history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring you more incredible content and share these captivating stories with a wider audience. Now, let's step into the war that changed Rome forever. The partnership between Octavian and Mark Antony began as a necessary, if uneasy, alliance. Following the assassination of Julius Caesar, the Second Triumvirate emerged as a powerful triumvirate consolidating control over the fragmented Roman Republic. Octavian, Caesar's ambitious heir, and Antony, his most trusted general, shared the reins of power with the weaker Lepidus. Together, they quashed their enemies and carved the empire into spheres of influence. Yet, this was no brotherhood of trust. Beneath the surface, their individual ambitions simmered, setting the stage for a bitter feud. Tensions deepened as Octavian and Antony's visions for Rome diverged. Antony's loyalty to traditional Roman values seemed overshadowed by his growing connection to Cleopatra, the enigmatic queen of Egypt. Their union, celebrated in lavish displays of wealth and power, was perceived in Rome as a betrayal of Roman identity. Antony's critics questioned his priorities, fueling Octavian's narrative that Antony was falling under foreign influence. This growing divide marked the beginning of an irreparable rift. Cleopatra's role added fuel to the fire, turning political rivalry into a personal vendetta. Antony's alliance with her alienated Roman aristocracy and emboldened Octavian, who capitalized on the public's distrust of Cleopatra's influence. While Antony reveled in his eastern conquests, Octavian worked tirelessly in Rome, presenting himself as the protector of traditional values. Propaganda became a weapon, painting Antony as a traitor and a puppet of the Egyptian queen. The alliance crumbled under the weight of personal grievances and competing ambitions. When Octavian declared Antony an enemy of Rome, it was not merely a political maneuver, it was a call to arms. Rome, once unified under Caesar, was now split between two titans whose mutual distrust had escalated into open hostility. Yet, how would Octavian translate his propaganda victories into military dominance? And what steps would Antony and Cleopatra take to consolidate their eastern power base as war loomed? Octavian, ever the tactician, orchestrated a masterclass in political manipulation as Rome braced for civil war. He flooded the city with claims of Antony's betrayal, presenting forged documents that alleged Antony planned to make Alexandria the new center of the empire. These accusations struck a chord with a Roman populace wary of foreign influence. Meanwhile, Octavian consolidated his power through a blend of alliances and intimidation, ensuring that the Senate declared war not on Antony, but on Cleopatra, framing the conflict as a national struggle rather than a civil war. Antony and Cleopatra, for their part, were no passive targets. They fortified their eastern holdings, amassing vast armies and a formidable navy. Cleopatra, an experienced strategist herself, poured Egypt's wealth into the cause, supporting Antony's preparations for the inevitable clash. However, despite their vast resources, their position was precarious. Antony's loyalty was stretched thin between his Roman legions and the Egyptian forces, while Cleopatra faced skepticism from some of Antony's commanders. The war became as much a battle of perception as of arms. Octavian's propaganda portrayed him as Rome's savior, while Antony's supporters emphasized his military credentials and alliance with a powerful queen. Yet, cracks began to show in Antony's strategy. His forces, while vast, were scattered and difficult to coordinate, while Octavian's loyal commander, Agrippa, methodically tightened the noose. By cutting off Antony's supply lines and securing key positions in the Mediterranean, Octavian gained a significant strategic advantage. Both sides understood the stakes. This war was not merely a struggle for dominance. It was a battle to define Rome's future. Octavian sought to preserve and centralize the Republic's legacy under his leadership, while Antony and Cleopatra envisioned a world where East and West coexisted under their shared rule. As tensions reached their peak, both leaders prepared for a decisive confrontation. Would Antony's experience and Cleopatra's resources prove enough to counter Octavian's calculated aggression? Or would Octavian's relentless strategy outmaneuver his adversaries entirely? With preparations complete, the stage was set for one of the most consequential naval battles in history, the Battle of Actium. But how did this legendary encounter unfold, and what critical missteps would determine its outcome? The Battle of Actium was not just a naval clash. It was the culmination of years of tension and political intrigue. On September 2nd, 31 BCE, the waters off the coast of Greece became the theater for a confrontation that would decide the fate of Rome. Antony and Cleopatra's fleet, though massive and imposing, faced Octavian's disciplined and agile navy, commanded by the brilliant strategist Agrippa. From the outset, Octavian's forces sought to exploit their superior maneuverability and strategic positioning. Antony and Cleopatra had amassed a fleet of over 500 ships, many of them towering quinquiremes designed for direct, overpowering assaults. However, these heavy warships were cumbersome, struggling to match the nimbleness of Agrippa's lighter and more maneuverable vessels. Agrippa, controlling key choke points in the Mediterranean, had already weakened Antony's supply lines, forcing his fleet into a position of desperation. As the two sides engaged, Octavian's forces targeted Antony's larger ships, using speed and precision to sow chaos in the enemy ranks. Midway through the battle, the tide turned dramatically. Cleopatra, observing the disarray, made a controversial decision. She ordered her squadron to retreat. Her ships sailed away from the battlefield, leaving Antony's forces demoralized and fragmented. Historians still debate her motives. Was it a calculated act of self-preservation, or a signal of her waning faith in Antony's ability to win? Whatever the reason, her departure shattered Antony's command structure, plunging his forces into further confusion. Antony, torn between his commitment to the fight and his allegiance to Cleopatra, abandoned the battle to follow her. This decision sealed the fate of his remaining forces. With their leader gone, Antony's fleet surrendered or was destroyed, while Octavian emerged triumphant. Yet, this victory was not merely a tactical triumph. It marked the definitive collapse of Antony and Cleopatra's bid for power. As Octavian surveyed the aftermath, he knew that the fall of his greatest rival was inevitable. But what would become of Antony and Cleopatra now, as they fled to Egypt, their dreams of empire shattered? The aftermath of Actium was not just about military defeat, but the unraveling of two lives intertwined by ambition and love. How would Antony, once Rome's revered general, face the humiliation of failure? And what role would Cleopatra, the indomitable queen, play in the final chapter of their story? Antony and Cleopatra retreated to Egypt, their ambitions reduced to ashes in the wake of Actium. As Octavian's forces closed in, their world became smaller and their options more limited. Antony, a shadow of the charismatic leader he once was, tried to muster a final defense. Cleopatra, ever resourceful, sought to negotiate with Octavian, leveraging Egypt's wealth and her own influence. However, Octavian, cold and calculating, had no intention of allowing his rivals to survive. Antony's final days were marked by despair and desperation. When false reports reached him that Cleopatra had taken her own life, Antony chose to follow what he believed was her example. Wounded and dying, he was carried to Cleopatra's chambers, where he discovered she was still alive. Their final moments together were a poignant reflection of their tumultuous journey, a love forged in ambition, now consumed by tragedy. Antony died in her arms, leaving Cleopatra to face an uncertain fate alone. Cleopatra's death remains one of history's most enigmatic moments. Refusing to be paraded as a trophy in Octavian's triumph, she reportedly took her own life, possibly using an asp venom. Whether this account is true or part of Octavian's propaganda, her death symbolized the end of an era. With Antony and Cleopatra gone, Octavian stood unchallenged as the master of Rome and the Mediterranean world. Octavian's victory marked not only the fall of his rivals, but the birth of a new political order. Rebranding himself as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, he ushered in the Pax Romana, a period of unprecedented stability and prosperity. The Republic was no more, replaced by an empire that would endure for centuries. Yet the personal cost of this transformation was profound. Antony and Cleopatra's story, a blend of passion and power, became a cautionary tale of ambition taken to its extremes. But how would Rome remember this pivotal conflict? Would Antony and Cleopatra be vilified as traitors or immortalized as tragic lovers? And what lessons did their downfall offer about the delicate balance between love, power, and loyalty? Before you go, think about this. Antony and Cleopatra's downfall was a tragic tale of love, power, and ambition taken to the extreme. But what lessons did their defeat offer about the balance of loyalty and glory? Now, imagine a soldier who faced similar crossroads, rising from humble beginnings to become the most decorated warrior of the Roman Empire. Spurious Augustinus defied fate, conquering challenges with courage and tactical brilliance. Click on the video next to this one to uncover the inspiring story of Spurious Augustinus and how his determination turned chaos into victory, carving his name into Roman history.